I never thought I'd live to hear my own daughter tell me I was not needed at Christmas dinner, especially not after everything I had done for her over the years, and even now, when I replay those words in my mind, they sting in a place I didn't know could still hurt. My name is Margaret, I'm 56 years old, and for as long as I can remember, Christmas has been my responsibility, my pride, and my way of holding our family together when everything else felt like it was falling apart. I was the one who woke up at dawn to put the turkey in the oven, who scrubbed pans until my back ached, who stayed up late on Christmas Eve wrapping gifts at the dining table with a single lamp on so I wouldn't wake anyone. I was the one who stretched every pound, every dollar, every bit of grocery money to make sure there was enough food for everyone, even in the years when I quietly skipped buying myself new shoes or a warm coat so my children could have their presents. For years, no one really asked how any of it magically appeared: the roast, the mashed potatoes, the puddings, the extra chairs, the clean tablecloths, the glittering tree in the corner, they just arrived, as if Santa himself had delivered them. But I knew. I knew because it was my hands, my time, and my bank card making it all happen. After my husband passed away when I was 47, Christmas became even more important to me. It was the one day of the year when the empty side of the bed didn't feel quite as loud, when the silence in the house was covered by laughter and clattering dishes and out-of-tune carols. I did everything I could to keep that feeling alive, not just for myself, but for my children, especially my daughter, Emily. When she was small, she used to follow me around the kitchen in her little red pajamas, asking 1,000 questions about why the turkey needed so long, why we put cloves in the ham, and why I always made that same trifle recipe my own mother used to make. She'd stand on a wooden stool to help me stir the gravy or sprinkle cheese over the potatoes, proud of every tiny job I gave her. Back then, she used to say, "When I'm big, I'm going to cook Christmas dinner for you, Mom, so you can sit down." I held on to that image for years, my grown daughter in her own kitchen, waving me away from the sink, telling me she would take care of it now. I just never imagined that what she really meant was that I wouldn't be needed at all. Things started changing slowly when Emily moved out in her early 20s and got her own place in the city. She got a job in marketing, started earning her own money, and began posting every tiny detail of her life online. Every coffee, every brunch, every candle she bought had to be photographed and shared. It was harmless at first, just the way of the younger generation, I told myself, but then I started noticing a pattern. She loved being seen as the one who organized things, the planner, the host, the one who had everything put together. When she started dating Adam, it only magnified. He came from a family where appearances mattered. They had coordinated outfits for family photos, professionally catered parties, and a habit of talking about everything in terms of aesthetic and vibes. I remember the first time I went to a small gathering at their flat. Emily had invited a few friends over for a Sunday lunch. When I arrived, the table was beautiful: candles, folded napkins, flowers, but when it came time to bring out the actual food, it was mostly store-bought. I didn't judge her, she was busy with work, and everyone starts somewhere. I even quietly brought along extra dishes, just in case. I laid them out without fuss, and the day went fine. But later that night, I saw the photos she posted online, hosting my first Sunday feast. So proud of this spread I put together. That word, stuck with me. When I looked closely, all of the dishes I made, all the ones everyone praised and went back for seconds of, weren't mentioned at all. It was as if I'd been invisible. The first time she suggested that Christmas could be at her place one year, I actually felt a flutter in my chest. I thought, here it is, the moment I've been waiting for, my daughter finally taking over, and I would be the one invited to sit and enjoy. We tried it for the first time 3 years ago. She was excited, full of ideas. She sent me mood boards for table settings and color schemes, links to recipes she found online, and asked what I thought. I remember looking at the list and seeing how ambitious it was. I gently said, "It's a lot, love. Maybe we can keep some things simple so you don't get overwhelmed." She laughed and told me I worried too much. But a week before Christmas that year, she called me and said, "Mom, can you help me with the shopping? It's more expensive than I thought." Of course I could. I went with her, pushed the trolley, and quietly slipped my card out at the till when I saw the total. "I'll transfer you," she said. She never did. On Christmas Eve, she called again. "Mom, I messed up the trifle. Can you maybe come over and fix it?" I went. And while I was there, I ended up peeling potatoes, checking the turkey, organizing the fridge, and setting the table with the linen I had brought just in case. On Christmas Day, her friends came, her in-laws came, and every time someone complimented the food, they said things like, "Emily, this is amazing," and she smiled, flushed with pride. I didn't say a word. It was her home, her party. I told myself it was enough for me to see everyone happy. But over the next couple of years, that pattern grew. Every Christmas that was supposedly hers was still funded and rescued by me, just quietly now. As she got busier and more concerned with how things appeared, I noticed she stopped asking where things came from. If the fridge was full when she needed it, that was enough. If the decorations turned up, she'd just hang them. She used my Amazon account to order table runners and fairy lights, my card for the big shop, and my loyalty points for the more expensive treats. And whenever I hinted at budgets or bills, she would say, "You're so old-fashioned, Mom. It's Christmas. It's supposed to be big." Meanwhile, I was watching my savings slowly drain, my energy spread thinner each year. Yet I continued, because I told myself this is what mothers do. We give. We stretch. We put ourselves last, and we call it love. This year, though, something felt different from the start. Maybe it was the way Emily talked, as if she had been promoted from daughter to executive host, and I was just one of the outdated traditions she was considering cutting. In early December, she invited me over to see the vision for Christmas. She had printed a color palette, soft gold, forest green, and white. She had a menu written in a neat font, with each dish assigned to a timeline. "This is what I'll post on the day," she said, showing me a mock-up of an Instagram story, hosting Christmas dinner for the whole family for the first time. Couldn't be prouder. My eyes lingered on the word first. I swallowed the lump in my throat and asked carefully, "Do you remember the Christmases at home? With your father? When you were little?" She smiled absent-mindedly, scrolling her phone. "Of course, Mom, I'm not erasing you. I'm just stepping up. People my age like to see that we're independent now. It's a thing." Then she handed me a list. "Can you help me with this?" "Just the boring stuff. Ordering the turkey, the tableware rental and the dessert. I'll handle the fun parts." The boring stuff turned out to be everything that actually made the dinner possible. I made the calls, secured the catering service for backup dishes, arranged the extra chairs and table, booked the tableware, and placed orders for the ingredients she wanted on hand in case. Each confirmation email landed in my own inbox. Each invoice was charged to my card because when the totals came up, and I paused, she said, "I'll pay you back after I get my bonus, okay?" I didn't want to embarrass her by insisting she pay immediately, especially not in front of Adam, who was listening. So I simply nodded and hoped she meant it this time. What I couldn't ignore, however, was the shift in how she spoke to me as the days went by. Whenever I called to check details, she sounded rushed, slightly irritated, like I was an assistant who'd overstepped. "Yes, Mom, I saw the email," she'd say. "You don't need to explain everything. I've got it." But she hadn't seen the email. Her address was only on the CC line I added as a courtesy. When I suggested we might need to adjust the menu because the catering company had warned about possible delays, she brushed it away. "You worry too much. It'll be fine. This is my event. I want it a certain way." My event. That phrase echoed in my head. Somewhere along the way, our Christmas had split into categories. Mine was the history, hers was the brand new, improved version, and I was supposed to stand to the side, grateful to be invited. 2 days before Christmas, the call came. I remember the moment in painful clarity. I was in my small kitchen, wrapping a scarf around my shoulders because the heating bill had gone up again, and I was trying to be sensible about energy use. A pot of tea was steeping on the counter, and I was actually preparing a small batch of mince pies just for myself, a little tradition I didn't tell anyone about. My phone buzzed, and Emily's name popped up on the screen with a little heart emoji I'd added years ago. I smiled automatically as I answered. "Hi, love." Her voice sounded brisk, almost businesslike. "Hey, Mom. Got a minute?" My heart dipped at her tone, but I said, "Of course." She took a breath. "So, I've been thinking about Christmas Day, and I just want to simplify things this year. You've done so much all these years, and I don't want you to stress or overdo it." I frowned, not understanding. "What do you mean?" She laughed lightly, the kind of laugh she uses when she's trying to soften something sharp. "I mean, you don't have to come early. Or at all, actually, if you don't feel like it. I've got everything handled here. The decorations, the cooking, the hosting. You're always running around and getting tired. I don't think you're really needed this year." For a second, I genuinely thought I had misheard her. My mind rushed ahead, trying to reinterpret her words into something less cruel. "Not needed?" I repeated, my voice barely more than a whisper. She sighed. "Mom, don't make it emotional. I just want a smoother Christmas this time. Less fuss. You know how you get about timing and oven space and all those little things. I just want a more relaxed vibe with everyone. I'm not saying you're banned or anything, I'm just saying you don't need to worry about being involved in every detail. Like, if it's too much for you to come, it's okay. Really. We've got it." The way she said "we" made me feel like I was suddenly on the outside of something I had built. I felt something deep in my chest crack, a slow, quiet split that I was sure she could hear through the phone if she had been listening closely. For a long moment, I didn't respond. I was afraid that if I spoke, everything I'd swallowed over the years would come spilling out and drown us both. In that heavy silence, my eyes fell on the pile of printed invoices on my kitchen table. The catering bill with my name and card details. The receipt for the rented table and chairs. The confirmation for the floral centerpieces she wanted for the content. I saw the numbers, the totals, the dates, and then I heard her casual voice again in my head, "You're not really needed." It was surreal, as someone had reached into my life, rearranged the truth, and handed it back to me with a different label. When I finally spoke, my voice sounded different to my own ears, quieter, steadier, hollowed out. "So," I said slowly, "you don't want me at Christmas dinner?" She exhaled as if I were being dramatic. "Oh my God, Mom, that's not what I said. Of course, you can come if you really want to. I'm just saying, don't feel obligated. Don't feel like you have to come help or anything. You can just relax at home. Maybe we'll drop by later with some leftovers." Leftovers. My throat tightened. For a moment, my mind flashed with images of past Christmases where I had carefully packed extra plates for her to take home when she was younger, wrapping them in foil and reminding her to reheat them properly. Now I was being offered the scraps of a meal I had paid for and prepared in every way but physically stirring the pot. "I see," I said quietly. Then, because decades of habit are hard to break, I added, "Well, if you need anything, I won't, Mom," she cut in quickly. "That's the point. I've got it. Honestly, this is a good thing. It means you raised a daughter who can handle things, right?" She said it like a joke, but it wasn't funny. Not to me. I could hear other voices in the background, Adam's, and maybe one of her friends. There was laughter, the clinking of glasses. She was calling me in the middle of a life that looked full and bright and busy, and I was just the person she needed to gently push aside to keep the picture tidy. "Right," I said slowly. "Well, if that's what you want." There was a pause. I think some small part of her expected me to argue, to insist on coming, to offer more help so she could soothe her conscience by saying, "See, Mom wants to be involved." But I didn't. I stared at the invoices on my table, at the evidence of my invisible work, and something in me went very still. "I hope it all goes well, then," I added. "Have a nice Christmas, Emily." My use of her full name, instead of love or sweetheart, seemed to startle her. "Mom, don't be like that," she said quickly. "I'm doing this for you. You need to rest. You're always saying how tired you are after cooking for everyone. This is me being thoughtful." It was almost impressive how she could twist the knife and call it kindness. "Of course," I replied softly. "Thank you for thinking of me." We exchanged a few more shallow words before she hung up, clearly eager to return to her evening. When the call ended, my kitchen was quiet again. Too quiet. I stood there for a long time with the phone still in my hand, listening to the ticking of the clock and the faint hum of the fridge. Then, very slowly, I set the phone down, pulled out a chair, and sat at the table with the invoices spread out in front of me like a deck of cards. That was the moment the confusion faded and clarity settled in. I read my own name over and over, on the catering invoice, on the rental agreement, on the supermarket order for the specialty items she had to have for the photos. Every line, every charge, every detail linked back to me. I saw the date the payments had gone through, remembered the small tightening in my chest when I'd clicked confirm, telling myself it was worth it to see her happy and proud. I remembered the look on her face when she showed me her mock-up post, hosting Christmas dinner for the whole family for the first time. Couldn't be prouder. Not a single mention of the mother who had quietly made it all possible. Not even an acknowledgement that she hadn't paid for it. And now, on top of all that, she had decided I was not needed. Not as a cook, not as a helper, not even as a presence. I thought about all the times I'd bitten my tongue when she forgot to say thank you, all the times I'd told myself she was just busy, just young, just trying to prove herself. But this wasn't just forgetfulness. It was a decision. A choice to erase me from the story. And as much as it hurt, there was a cold, sharp line of truth running straight through that realization. I had allowed this. I had taught her, with my silence and my endless giving, that I was a resource she could draw from without acknowledgement. That my time, my money, my energy would always be available, no questions asked. I had been so desperate to keep the tradition of Christmas alive that I hadn't noticed my own place in it being quietly overwritten. I wrapped my hands around my mug of now lukewarm tea and stared out of the window into the dark evening. The streetlights cast a pale glow on the pavement, and I could see a few houses with early Christmas lights twinkling in the distance. Somewhere out there, people were baking, wrapping presents, and making plans with people who wanted them there. I let myself cry then, not the loud, dramatic crying of someone seeking comfort, but the quiet, aching tears of a woman mourning something she couldn't fully name. I wasn't just grieving the phone call. I was grieving the years that had led up to it, the way I had slowly disappeared into the background of my own life without noticing. I cried for the young version of me who had stayed up all night sewing costumes for school plays, for the tired 30-something who had taken on extra shifts so there would be presents under the tree, for the 47-year-old widow who had forced herself to smile through her first Christmas without her husband so the children wouldn't see her break. I cried for the mother who had believed, naively, that if she gave enough, loved enough, sacrificed enough, she would always be valued. By the time the tears stopped, something inside me had shifted. The raw hurt was still there, and it would be for a while, but now it sat alongside something else, something steadier and colder, resolve. I looked again at the invoices and realized something Emily clearly hadn't considered. For all her talk of independence and adulting and hosting, for all her curated images and practiced phrases, she had overlooked a very simple fact: the person who pays for things has power. My name wasn't just a detail. It was the key to everything she thought she controlled. She had built her perfect Christmas on foundations she didn't own. She had taken my support for granted, assuming it would always be there, invisible and unquestioning. And now she had used that very support as a cushioned platform from which to tell me I was not needed. The irony of it was almost laughable. I didn't laugh, but I did feel the corners of my mouth twitch in something that wasn't quite a smile. I gathered the papers into a neat stack and placed them in a folder. Then I went to the drawer where I kept my notebook with passwords, phone numbers, and important details. I opened it to the page where I'd written the customer service contacts for the catering company, the rental service, and the florist. My fingers hovered over the numbers for a moment. I didn't dial them. Not yet. This wasn't a decision to make in anger. I knew myself well enough to understand that revenge taken in the heat of rage always comes out messy, and I didn't want messy. I wanted clarity. I wanted the truth to be seen, not shouted. So instead, I closed the notebook, set it beside the folder, and told myself I would sleep on it. If I woke up in the morning and still felt this way, this calm, this aware, this certain, then I would act. Until then, I would let the weight of her words settle fully in my bones. You're not really needed. I went to bed that night with a strange sense of hollow quiet inside me. Not peace. Not yet. But not the frantic, heartbroken scrambling I would once have done either, trying to fix things, to make it easier for her, to squeeze myself back into a space she had pushed me out of. No. This time, I didn't reach out. I didn't send a follow-up text. I didn't offer to pop round and help anyway. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and let the loneliness wash over me until it receded, leaving behind a firm, unshakable thought. If my daughter truly believed I wasn't needed at Christmas, then it was about time she learned what Christmas looked like without me. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, not because I had anything to cook or prepare, but because my mind simply refused to let me sleep any longer. For a few seconds, in that hazy space between dreaming and waking, I forgot about the phone call. I just lay there listening to the quiet, noticing the pale winter light squeezing through the gap in the curtains, and I almost turned over to drift back off. Then Emily's voice came back to me, clear as if she were standing at my bedside. You're not really needed this year, we've got it. The words landed in my chest like a weight, dragging me fully into consciousness. I stared at the ceiling, my eyes tracing an old crack in the paint, and felt the ache rise again. For a moment, I thought I would cry like I had the night before, but instead, something else rose to meet the ache, an almost startling steadiness. I rolled onto my side, reached for my glasses, and forced myself to sit up. Right, I murmured into the empty room, my voice hoarse but calm, let's see exactly what I'm supposedly not needed for. It felt strange to stand in my kitchen that morning without a list of tasks already waiting, no defrosting schedule, no timetable for baking, no notes about oven rotation. Instead, I had a different kind of job. I made myself a fresh cup of tea, stronger than usual, and set it down beside the neat folder of invoices I'd gathered the night before. The papers looked so innocent, just ink and numbers on white sheets, but I knew they represented something much bigger, years of unspoken assumptions, of invisible labor, of me stepping in so quietly that no one even realized they were standing on a bridge I'd built under their feet. I opened the folder and took out the first sheet, the catering order. At the top, in bold black letters, was the company name, followed by the details: full Christmas dinner for 12, plus starters and canapés, scheduled for delivery at 3 p.m. on Christmas Day. And there, under billing information, was my name, my address, my email, my card details. Not Emily's. Not we. Me. I read it slowly, letting the reality of it sink in without flinching away. Then I turned to the next paper, the linen rental. Tablecloths, napkins, chair covers. Again, my name. My card. The same pattern repeated itself with the table and chair hire, the floral centerpieces, the specialty cheeses, and the extra desserts. Line after line, receipt after receipt, each one quietly confirming what I had already known in my gut. The Christmas she was bragging about hosting, the one where I was apparently not needed, was being propped up entirely by me. After I'd gone through the physical papers, I opened my laptop and signed into my email, scrolling back through the last few weeks. It was all there, a trail of digital breadcrumbs that told the story more clearly than any conversation ever had. Thank you for your payment, Margaret. Your order has been confirmed, Margaret. Receipt for your purchase, Margaret. Some of them had Emily's email copied in, where I had tried to keep her in the loop, but most had gone only to me because that was how the systems were set up. The cardholder, the responsible adult, the one who actually made things happen. As I clicked through, another window opened automatically on the side of the screen, my banking app. The list of transactions made my stomach twist. There was the catering charge, the biggest one, sitting like a red flag in the middle of the month. Around it were the smaller but still significant payments, deposits, holding fees, and pre-authorizations. The total sum was not small. It was the kind of amount I would once have discussed with my husband, sitting at the table with a notepad, deciding if we could afford it, where we'd need to cut back, and whether we should scale down. Now, it was money I had just let flow out, because my daughter had said, "I'll transfer you after my bonus," and because I had told myself, this is what mothers do. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my temples, feeling a headache brewing at the back of my skull. I wasn't stupid. I knew Emily wasn't deliberately trying to bankrupt me. In her mind, we were probably just operating under the same unspoken arrangement we always had. I handle the practical side, she handles the hosting. But the problem wasn't just the money, it was that she had taken that arrangement, built her identity on top of it, and then turned around and declared that I was no longer necessary. She had used my efforts as a launchpad and then tried to kick the platform away as if it were clutter. That realization didn't just hurt, it insulted something deep, something I didn't even fully understand until that moment, my sense of having mattered, of having been the backbone of this family. I might have sat there feeling sorry for myself all day if something on the screen hadn't caught my eye. A small notification icon blinked in the corner. I clicked it, and Emily's Instagram page popped up, one of those automatic suggestions, tied to the last time she'd tagged me in a post. Curiosity nudged me, and against my better judgment, I clicked on her profile. There she was, my daughter, grinning in a series of carefully posed photographs. One in particular stood out, Emily standing in front of a long wooden table in her dining room, now set with sample decor. She had candles arranged in staggered heights, a garland running down the center, and a scattering of baubles and pine cones. It was a trial run, clearly, something she'd done to show her followers her planning process. The caption read, "Can't believe I'm finally hosting Christmas dinner all by myself this year. Adulting level, unlocked. Pray for me." The comments were full of people applauding her. "You've got this, girl. So proud of you. Your mom must be so impressed." I stared at that last comment for a long time, my lips pressed together. There was a reply from Emily underneath, "Haha, she's trying not to meddle for once, dot." My chest tightened. Trying not to meddle. As if the years of work and care and sacrifice had been nothing more than fussy interference. As if I were not the architect, but the annoying inspector. I scrolled further down and found a photo of a charcuterie board idea, meats, cheeses, fruits arranged on a cutting board with tiny labels stuck into each section. She'd written, "Pinterest-inspired charcuterie test. Don't ask how much this costs? Worth it though for the content." I snorted, an ugly sound that surprised me. I knew exactly how much it had cost. I had the receipt in my inbox. The money hadn't come from her at all. It had come from me, from my carefully managed budget, from the savings pot I'd been using less and less for myself and more for these events. Slowly, I closed the laptop, feeling something cold and sharp settle into my body, like the first icy wind after a long, wet autumn. That was when the practical part of my brain, the part that had organized years of student schedules, household budgets, and holiday logistics, quietly stepped forward. If I were truly not needed, then logically, she shouldn't be relying on my resources. If she genuinely believed she had got it, then she should stand on her own 2 feet. And if she was determined to treat me like an optional extra, then I was going to give her the rare gift of seeing what her life looked like without my invisible scaffolding propping it up. I picked up the notebook with all the vendor information and flipped it open. On the page with the catering company, I ran my finger under the note I'd scribbled when I first booked them, "Cancellation window, full refund up to 10 a.m. December 25th. Partial refund until 12 p.m. At the time, I'd written it down just as a practical detail, a little safety net in case of illness or a sudden change of plan. Now I looked at those 2 sentences and felt an unfamiliar sensation, leverage. Dialed the number for the catering company, my heart thudding a little faster as the line rang. A bright-voiced woman answered, cheerful and efficient. Good morning, Northgate Catering, how can I help? Hello there, I said, keeping my tone polite, steady. My name is Margaret Collins. I have a Christmas Day booking under my name for 12 people at Maple Close. I read out the reference. Yes, Mr. S. Collins, she replied. We've got you down for delivery at 3 p.m. on the 25th. Is everything all right? I paused for half a second, choosing my words. I just wanted to check our options in case we need to adjust or cancel, I said. Could you remind me of your refund policy? She repeated what was written in my notes, confirming that yes, I could cancel the entire order for a full refund up until Christmas morning, and a partial refund up until midday. The tone of her voice suggested she assumed it was just a cautious question, the kind anxious hosts ask when they fear a guest might drop out. She had no idea what those words meant to me in that moment. Thank you, I said. I'm not canceling just yet. I just wanted to understand the window. I'll call back if needed. Of course, she said. We're here if you need us. I hung up and sat there for a moment, staring at the phone. We're here if you need us. Strange how even a stranger's phrase could sting now that Emily's opposite words were echoing in me. Next, I called the rental company for the tables and chairs. A man with a slightly gruff, distracted voice answered. When I gave my name and reference, he pulled up the booking and started listing off the items: 4 folding tables, 12 chairs, 1 drinks cart, 1 coat rack. I waited for him to finish before asking, and if I had to cancel the booking? He told me there would be a small cancellation fee, but most of the payment would be returned if I called at least a day in advance. I did a quick calculation in my head, subtracting the fee from the total, and realized I would get back almost everything. The same was true for the florist, whom I called next. She sounded genuinely apologetic about the idea of cancellation, explaining that she'd already ordered some of the flowers, but she assured me she could still sell them separately if needed and wouldn't charge me full price. With each call, the pattern became clearer. I was not trapped. I was not locked into moving forward with Emily's version of Christmas out of guilt or obligation. Every single piece of the puzzle was still in my hands, because I was the one who had put it together in the first place. By the time I'd spoken to the last vendor, the tremor in my hands had steadied. The act of gathering information, of calmly asking questions and noting the answers, had done something important inside me. It had shifted me from being a victim of the situation to being a participant, a decision-maker. I wasn't just sitting there, wounded, waiting to see what my daughter would do. I had choices. Real, practical choices. I made myself another cup of tea and leaned against the counter while the kettle boiled, thinking things through. I wasn't interested in petty cruelty. I had no desire to sabotage Christmas just to watch her stumble. I didn't want to see my grandchild, if and when she had one in the future, grow up hearing stories about how grandma had ruined everything out of spite. That was not who I was. What I wanted was something more precise, more meaningful. I wanted her to understand the link between effort and outcome, between money and gratitude. I wanted her to see the invisible lines that connected her performance of adulthood to the quiet, uncredited work behind the scenes. I wanted her to feel, even for a short while, the weight of doing it all herself so that she would stop treating me like a relic to be stored away when she wanted a clean backdrop. So I asked myself, what would it look like to teach that lesson without stepping completely out of the story? I pictured Christmas Day at her flat if I went ahead and canceled everything. Guests arriving to no food, no extra chairs, no beautifully set table. Emily flustered, panicking, throwing things together. It would certainly make a statement, but it would also punish everyone else, Adam, his parents, and any friends they'd invited. People who knew nothing of our private conversation. As much as I was hurting, I couldn't bring myself to deliberately humiliate her in front of him. I knew too well how shame can bury itself deep and sour a relationship permanently. So I decided on something quieter, but no less powerful. I would prepare, for myself. I would ensure that if the day fell apart, there was a place where the pieces could be gathered. That place would be my home, my table, my kitchen. My Christmas. With that decision made, I put my mug down, got my coat and handbag, and headed out to the supermarket. The air outside was crisp and cold, the kind that pinched your cheeks and made your breath visible. People bustled along the pavements with bags and wrapped boxes, their conversations full of plans, frustrations, and little joys. I walked slowly at first, my hands buried in my pockets, letting the noise of the world wash over me. It felt strange to be out like this so close to Christmas without a detailed shopping list clenched in my hand. Usually, I would be in full strategy mode by now, thinking about how many potatoes per person, how many sprouts I'd need, and whether to get an extra pudding in case someone brought a guest. Today, I walked into the supermarket with a very different mindset. I got a small trolley and steered it calmly down the aisles, choosing only what I would need for a simple, modest Christmas Day meal for one, or possibly more, if the day unfolded the way some quiet part of me suspected it might. I picked up a small turkey crown instead of a whole bird, a bag of good potatoes, some carrots and parsnips, a packet of stuffing mix, a tiny Christmas pudding just big enough for 2 or 3 servings, and some custard. I added a loaf of fresh bread, butter, cheese, and a jar of cranberry sauce. Then I paused, my hand hovering over a box of crackers. I hesitated, then dropped them into the trolley as well. It felt slightly ridiculous, buying crackers for myself, but I could hear my late husband's voice in my head. It's not Christmas without a paper hat that doesn't fit and a bad joke, Megs. A small smile tugged at my lips. I added a second box. If nothing else, I could use them next year. At the checkout, I paid in cash, watching the notes leave my wallet and thinking about how different this transaction felt compared to the card payments that had quietly funded Emily's big event. This was money I was spending consciously, on a day I was planning for myself, not because someone else had asked or assumed, but because I deserved at least that much. The total was reasonable, a fraction of what I had already laid out this month, and as the cashier handed me the receipt, I felt a peculiar sense of relief. No one could cancel this. No one could exclude me from it. This small, simple Christmas was mine. Back home, I put the groceries away carefully, labeling a couple of containers in the fridge like I always did, out of habit. When everything was stored, I stood in the middle of my kitchen and looked around, suddenly seeing the room not as a place of endless chores, but as a space that might, for once, be centered on me. There would be no frantic, last-minute rush here. No criticism over gravy thickness or turkey moisture. No one was complaining that the pudding was too traditional or the music was too old-fashioned. Just me, in my own time, with food I had chosen and paid for without anyone's expectations pressed onto my shoulders. The thought felt lighter than I expected. As the day went on, my phone buzzed several times with messages in various group chats. Emily had created a Christmas crew thread for the people coming to her dinner, herself, Adam, his parents, his sister, and a couple of friends. She had added me too, probably out of habit rather than intention. As I scrolled through the messages, I saw her discussing dress codes, arrival times, and whether they should do a secret Santa or bring individual gifts. Someone asked if they should bring a dish, and Emily replied, "No need, we've got everything sorted. Just bring yourselves and maybe a bottle. We're going all out this year." Every time she said we, my chest tightened, but I forced myself to stay silent. I didn't want to tip my hand. At one point, someone mentioned me directly, "Is your mom coming early to help?" Emily replied with a laughing emoji. "Nope, I banned her from the kitchen this year. She's not allowed to stress." The word ban stung, even wrapped in humor, but I let the feeling pass. People assumed what they wanted to assume. I knew the real story now, and soon, so would she. That evening, my sister, Claire, called me from her home 2 towns over. "So, you ready for the big day at Emily's?" she asked cheerfully. I hesitated, considering how much to say. "Not exactly," I replied. She told me I wasn't really needed this year. There was a silence on the other end of the line so long I thought the call had dropped. Then Claire's voice came back, incredulous and sharp. She said what? I repeated the conversation as calmly as I could, leaving out some of the harsher phrases but keeping the gist. Claire listened in stunned silence, then let out a low whistle. That girl has no idea, she said finally. No idea what you do for her. What you've done. I mean, you're the reason she can even afford half the life she's showing off about. Her anger on my behalf was both comforting and slightly embarrassing. I wasn't used to anyone defending me like that. Well, I said quietly, she's about to learn. I've been looking at the invoices this morning. Everything's in my name. The catering, the rentals, the flowers, all of it. You can cancel it, Claire said immediately, the practical one as always. Get your money back. Let her sort it out. She's the one who doesn't need you, right? I let out a small, humorless laugh. Yes, I can cancel. And I'm thinking about it. But I don't want to destroy her Christmas just to prove a point. I need her to see the truth. To acknowledge it. To stop treating me like some outdated ornament she can put back in the box. Claire was quiet for a moment. So what are you going to do? She asked. I looked around my little kitchen, at the groceries I'd just put away, at the folder of invoices on the table. I'm going to be ready, I said simply. For whatever happens. I've checked the policies. I've made my own plans. If she really doesn't need me, then she'll manage. If she does, well, she'll find me where I've always been. Here. But this time, she'll come because she understands, not because she assumes. Claire made a thoughtful noise. You know, Mags, she said softly, you've spent your whole life cushioning her from consequences. Maybe it's time she feels just a little of what it's like when you're not there to catch everything. I swallowed past the lump in my throat. Maybe it is, I agreed. After we hung up, I went back to my folder one last time that day. I took out the catering invoice and, at the top, wrote in neat letters, call by 10 a.m. December 25th if canceling. On the rental agreement, I wrote, call by December 24th if canceling to avoid full fee. I put sticky notes with phone numbers on the front of the folder and left it on the kitchen table, along with my notebook. It was like laying out ingredients the night before a big cook, mise en place, my mother used to call it. Everything in its place, ready to be used. Only this time, my ingredients weren't flour and sugar and spices. They were information, options, the quiet power of being the one who actually holds the reins. That night, as I got ready for bed, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. My face looked older than I felt inside, fine lines carved deeper by years of worry and late nights. For a long moment, I simply studied my reflection, really looked at the woman standing there. She didn't look like someone who was not needed. She looked like someone who had carried entire holidays on her back. Someone who had stood in the kitchen with aching feet and still found the strength to smile when the family sat down. Someone who had kept going even when her heart was broken and her bank balance was thin. I lifted my chin a little and nodded to myself. You're not done yet, I whispered. You're just changing how you show up. When I finally lay down, I didn't feel the same hollow ache I'd felt the night before. The hurt was still there, yes, but it was no longer running the show. It sat off to the side like a wounded child, watched over by a steadier, older self who had made a decision. I would not beg to be needed. I would not force my presence where it was unwelcome. But I would also not keep funding and facilitating a story that erased me. Somewhere between those two lies, sacrifice and self-erasure, I had found a new truth. I was allowed to step back and let my absence speak louder than any argument ever could. And as I drifted toward sleep, one clear thought rose above the rest, strong and unshakable. When the time came, I would not raise my voice or make a scene. I would simply do what I had always done, quietly, efficiently, deliberately, only this time, my actions wouldn't be about saving Christmas. They would be about saving myself. I woke up on Christmas morning with a strange mixture of peace and tension sitting in my chest, the kind that doesn't quite feel like anxiety but isn't quite calm either, as if the day itself were holding its breath. My house was quiet, the kind of quiet only winter mornings seem to know, and for a brief moment I simply lay there, listening to nothing but the gentle hum of the radiator and the soft rustle of the curtains stirring under a draft. Then I remembered what day it was, not just Christmas, but this Christmas, the one where my daughter had declared I was not needed, the one I had spent the last 2 days preparing myself for emotionally and practically. I sat up slowly, slid my feet into my slippers, and wrapped my robe around me, feeling the stillness settle into my bones. For the first time in years, there was no running downstairs to check the turkey, no last-minute chopping of vegetables, no clatter of baking trays being pulled from cupboards. Instead, I made myself a quiet breakfast, a slice of toast, tea brewed in my favorite pot, and sat at the kitchen table with the invoices spread neatly beside me like a final exam paper waiting to be marked. I had permitted myself to wait until this morning to make the final call, to decide whether I would cancel everything or let the day unfold as Emily had planned, but as I looked at my phone resting face down beside the kettle, I realized my heart had already made the decision long before my mind caught up. I wasn't doing this out of spite or vengeance, I was doing it because my absence had been requested formally, almost clinically, and it was time for her to experience what absence actually felt like when the foundation holding up her perfect image stepped aside. I turned the phone over, tapping it awake, and opened the contact list I had prepared. The catering company answered after 2 rings, the same bright voice as before. I told her I needed to cancel the order. She asked if everything was all right, and I told her simply that there had been a change of plans. She processed the refund quickly, wishing me a Merry Christmas. It was almost surreal how easy it was, how a few words spoken into a phone could undo hours of bragging posts and carefully curated stories. Next, I called the rental service. The man on the other end sounded tired but was polite enough. He noted the cancellation, confirmed the partial refund, and thanked me. Then the florist, apologetic but understanding. Each call felt like snipping another thread in a tangled web I had been caught in for years. When the last vendor confirmed with an email that the order had been refunded, I set my phone down gently, exhaling a long breath I hadn't even realized I'd been holding. The usual chaos of Christmas morning was replaced by a still, almost sacred quiet, broken only by the soft clicking sound of incoming notifications, emails confirming cancellations, refunds processing, apologies for any inconvenience. Inconvenience. What a strangely poetic word for the storm brewing in my daughter's day. I didn't check the group chat. I didn't scroll through Instagram. I didn't peek at the time beyond glancing at the clock now and then just to confirm I was still, in fact, grounded in reality. Instead, I cooked my small Christmas dinner, the gentle seasoning of the turkey crown, the peaceful rhythm of peeling potatoes, the soothing sound of vegetables simmering, all at my own pace, without anyone judging or hovering or texting me last-minute questions. The longer I stayed in that quiet bubble, the more I felt something inside me settling into place, like pieces of a puzzle that had long been forced into the wrong spaces suddenly finding their true shape. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a series of messages, but I didn't open them. I knew, even without looking, that they were from the vendors texting Emily to inform her that the orders had been cancelled at the request of the cardholder. I imagined her expression when she saw them, confusion at first, then panic rising in sharp, jagged waves. The beautifully curated image she had planned to post that afternoon, the perfect spread she had promised her guests, the effortless hosting persona she had so proudly constructed, crumbling in seconds. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt like a bad mother. That's the script society gives us, isn't it? Mothers aren't supposed to let their children fall. They're supposed to cushion every drop, solve every problem, fix every mistake. But as I stood in my kitchen, stirring my gravy and tasting the seasoning, I felt none of that guilt. I felt justified. Balanced. Maybe even liberated. By 3 o'clock, the sun had dipped low, casting golden light across my living room. I lit a candle, put on quiet carols, and sat with a cup of tea as snow began to fall outside, soft flakes drifting lazily down like feathers from a torn pillow. It was peaceful. Beautiful, even. And then, at exactly 4:17 p.m., my phone vibrated violently against the wooden table, jolting me from my calm. The screen lit up with one word, Emily. I stared at it for 3 full rings before answering, my voice steady when I said, "Hello." Her voice, in stark contrast, was frantic, breathless, almost hoarse with panic. Mom. Mom. Something's wrong, everything's gone. The catering, there's no food. They said the order was cancelled and refunded. The tables aren't coming. The flowers aren't coming. The plates, the chairs, there's nothing. What happened? Her trembling voice echoed through the receiver, and I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply before responding. Well, I said softly, you mentioned I wasn't needed this year. So I assumed you had everything handled. Silence. Not the irritated silence from the other day. Not the dismissive silence she used when she thought I was being old-fashioned. No, this silence was sharp, stunned, heavy with realization. Mom, she whispered, the first crack in her voice appearing like a fracture in glass. Mom, did you pay for all of it? For years, I had been waiting for her to ask that question, not just with her mouth, but with her heart. And there it was. Finally spoken. Finally real. Yes, sweetheart, I said gently. I paid for all the Christmases you've hosted. This one included. And when you told me I wasn't needed, I stopped paying. That last sentence hung between us, a truth too big to hide from anymore. I could hear the sound of voices in the background, murmurs of confusion, footsteps pacing, someone asking what time dinner was supposed to start. Then her voice again, breaking completely. Mom. I didn't know. I didn't realize. I thought, she trailed off, and I could picture her trembling, her hands shaking the same way they did when she was a little girl trying to admit she'd broken something. You thought it all appeared by itself? I asked quietly. She sniffed, and I heard her trying desperately not to cry. No. Mom, I'm so stupid. I didn't mean, God, I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought you'd be relieved not to help. I thought, her words tangled into choked sobs, and something inside me softened, not the softening of surrender or guilt, but the softening that comes when truth finally has space to breathe. Emily, I said gently, if you wanted to host Christmas, you should have hosted it. Fully. And if you wanted my help, you should have asked. Respectfully. She sobbed harder now, full, messy crying, the kind that doesn't come from embarrassment but from genuine remorse. Mom, please. I don't know what to do. Everyone's here. There's no dinner. There's nothing set up. I can't, Mom, I can't fix this. Please, please help me. A younger version of me might have rushed out the door instantly, sacrificing everything, my dignity, my hurt, my time, just to keep her from feeling any discomfort. But that mother wasn't me anymore. I took a breath, letting the steady, guiding warmth in my chest shape my words. You're welcome to come here, I said. My door is open. But you will not find a lavish catered dinner. You will find a simple Christmas meal I prepared for myself. If you want that, and if you're ready to talk honestly, you're welcome. There was another long pause, then a shaky whisper, I'll be there in 10 minutes. She arrived 12 minutes later, knocking softly on the door like a child afraid to wake a sleeping parent. When I opened it, she stood there with red eyes, smudged mascara, and trembling lips. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but emotionally, as if the weight she'd been carrying, the image she'd been projecting, had been stripped away, revealing the girl who used to stand on a stool beside me stirring gravy. Mom, she whispered, her voice breaking again as she stepped inside. I'm so sorry. And for the first time in a long time, I saw sincerity, not the performative kind, not the Instagram-worthy kind, but real, raw human remorse. I didn't gloat. I didn't list all the ways she had hurt me. I didn't hold her face in the mistakes like someone rubbing a puppy's nose into a mess. I simply touched her arm gently and said, sit down, love. Let's talk. She cried then, fully and uncontrollably, telling me how overwhelmed she had been, how much pressure she felt to look successful, how she thought hosting Christmas would prove something, to herself, to others. She admitted she had assumed I was always fine, always managing, that I didn't need thanks because I had always just done it. She confessed she hadn't realized how much things cost, how many details I handled, how much effort it actually took to make everything look effortless. And as she spoke, as the words poured out like a confession decades overdue, I felt the anger inside me dissolve, replaced by something deeper, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. When she finished, she wiped her face with her sleeve and whispered, "Mom, please tell me what I can do." And for the first time, I didn't tell her. I didn't step in and take over. Instead, I said, "You can help me finish setting the table. We're having Christmas dinner here." Her eyes widened, and she looked around the room, my small dining table, my modest decorations, the simple dishes still warming on the stove. No grandeur. No spectacle. No curated perfection. Just home. We cooked together for the first time in years, not the performative cooking she did for photos, not the rushed cooking she used to do as a teen, but real cooking, side by side, sharing space and laughter and tearful sighs as we peeled vegetables and stirred sauces. She asked questions she had never asked before. How long do you roast parsnips? How do you make gravy without lumps? Why do you always add a bit of lemon to the turkey? Simple things, the kind you only learn from being present. And as she learned, as she listened, I realized this was the moment I had been waiting for, not the dramatic reveal, not the downfall of her plans, but this quiet reconnection, this reclaiming of our roles not as mother and dependent child, but as two women meeting honestly at last. When everything was ready, we set the table together, nothing fancy, just plates, glasses, crackers, and a little candle in the middle. She put her hand on the candle and whispered, "I like this better." And for the first time, I believed her. We ate slowly, talking between bites, sharing stories from past Christmases, laughing at memories we had both forgotten. She apologized again, gently this time, not in panic but with genuine reflection. "I don't want to be that person," she said. "I don't want to take you for granted again. I don't want to pretend I'm doing things on my own when really, you've been the one doing everything." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Then don't," I said simply. "Next time, ask. Next time, acknowledge. Next time, see me." She nodded, tears welling again, but this time they were soft tears, not jagged ones. When dinner ended, she helped me wash dishes, another first in years, and the quiet clinking of plates became a kind of music, a rhythm of healing I hadn't realized our relationship needed so desperately. Later that evening, she stood in the doorway, her coat half on, and said, "Mom, thank you for today." I smiled gently and replied, "Thank you for coming." She hesitated, then added, "And next year, if I host again, I'll do it properly. And if I need you, I'll ask. And if you help, I'll say thank you." Loudly. I laughed softly. That's all I ever wanted. She hugged me then, long, tight, full of all the emotions she hadn't known how to express before, and when she left, the house felt warm, not lonely. As I stood alone in my quiet living room afterward, listening to the fading sound of her footsteps in the snow, I realized something profound. Revenge hadn't been about ruining her day. It hadn't been about punishing her. It had been about restoring balance, showing her the truth she had ignored, reclaiming the dignity I had given away piece by piece in the name of love. And in the end, the victory wasn't that her dinner had fallen apart. The victory was that my daughter finally saw me, not as an invisible helper, not as an outdated relic, but as a woman whose work, sacrifice, and presence had value. A woman who was needed, not for what I provided, but for who I was. And that, more than any catered dinner or perfect Instagram post, was the real Christmas miracle.